So it's of course a huge honor and a huge pleasure to be here. And what I will try to do in the next 10 minutes is talk about the work I did together with my great colleagues, Christoph Fuchs and Stefano Pontoni. But a warning, okay? I'm a trained psychologist, so this will be a different talk. So as you all know, right, the impact of technology has received a lot of attention by the media, by the public, and by researchers. And of course, there's a lot of debate, right? There are kind of the doomsday sayers that say this time will be different. Robots cannot only replace, technology cannot only replace physical tasks, but increasingly cognitive tasks. And that's why people would be put in permanent unemployment. Others, probably the majority, are saying this time is not different. History will be a good guide, and eventually new jobs will be created. So I'm sorry, I don't know the answer, okay? But we think that there is a psychological perspective ignored in this debate, right? And that's very easy. I mean, how do people and how do society and workers react to these developments? So what psychological consequences do people associate with losing their jobs to modern technology, and how is that basically different from losing your job to another person? So to gain some insights into this question, we conducted the following study. We acquired 124 participants and we presented them the following scenario, okay? So it's a scenario-based study, so don't worry, we didn't kick somebody out. So we basically tell them, you know, imagine a company needs to cut down its operating costs, and therefore it has two options available, okay? In option A, existing employees will be replaced by robots. And in option B, basically the same, but existing employees will be replaced by new employees. And as our dependent variable, which was very easy, was choice. So what would you prefer, option A or option B? So, and what we find here is that roughly 70% of the people preferred human replacement, okay? So they want other people to rather be replaced by other humans than by robots. And you might now rightly say this is not too surprising because it isn't, right? People have families and they need a paycheck, and robots don't, so we would expect that people somehow side with humans. So, but now what happens if we change one thing and one thing only, right? What happens if we change the perspective? So what if it's not about the job of somebody else, but what if it's about your own job? Okay, so here's basically the same text that you've seen before. The only thing that we changed is now it's not the company, now it's your company. And in option A, not existing employees will be replaced, but you will be replaced by robots. And in option B, you will be replaced by new employees. And now we basically did the same thing. We asked them, what would you prefer? And what we found in this condition is that some of preferences switched, right? So people would rather indicate they would rather be replaced by a robot than by another human. So this is from the paper. It was published last year. So we replicated this. That as we switched the perspective, we also switched preferences. We basically did some studies in the European Union, also in the US, and we seem to find roughly the same effects. So now, I mean, what is going on, okay? Why does this preference reversal occur? And very, very roughly and quickly, humans, in psychology, we would argue, you know, humans have a natural tendency to compare ourselves to others. And it's a lot easier to compare yourself to another human being than to compare yourself to modern technology, right? What we would say in psychology is that other humans are psychologically a lot closer to you than a machine is. And that's why robots actually induce less relevant social comparisons. And I mean, one of the most important things we have is our sense of identity, our sense of self-worth, that we are feeling ourselves as competent, right? And these feelings are much less threatened by a robot than another human being. And that's why in the short term, people have a kind of psychological incentive to prefer robot, right? But, I mean, in the long term, people should realize that being replaced by technology is not a good thing for your skills. Also for your skills in the labor market, right? And that's why, I mean, actually, robotic replacement should be associated with greater concerns about your own economic future. So we tested this assumption in a manufacturing study. So what we did is we acquired 296 manufacturing workers and we presented them kind of the same scenario. Imagine you would lose your job, right? So what would you prefer? Would you prefer being replaced by a new manufacturing worker, or would you prefer being replaced by new technology? And then we asked them which of these options would be more threatening to your identity, to yourself, to your competences, and which option would be more threatening to how you think about your own economic future. And then we also measured, right, whether people thought they could be replaced by, the job could be replaced by technology, so that we actually tried to figure out whether they just don't believe the scenario is realistic. So which replacement option would participants prefer in this case? So we again find that manufacturing workers would rather be replaced by new technology than by a new manufacturing worker. And of course, as we hypothesized, participants associated being replaced by new technology with less threat to their own identity, right? But with more future economic concerns. So now you might think, is it only about the manufacturing sector? And according to our studies, not really. So we have performed different studies in different sectors, for example, in more white-collar sectors like translation, and we basically replicate the same findings. And the last study I want to quickly present is the following one, right? Where we asked ourselves, can we replicate our findings with people who experienced a job loss? Okay, that's why we acquired some people who indicated they have lost their jobs quite recently. And then we basically measured, right, what did they perceive were the reason responsible for their job loss? Was it due to automation, or do they think that another person has now their job? And then we measured, right, how much did this job loss threaten yourself, and how much future concerns did the job loss induce? And we measured a bunch of control variables like duration of unemployment, former and current income, and a bunch of other stuff. So now I don't have a laser pointer, I'm sorry. But what we find is that human replacement is, in all our regression models, always associated with more self-threat. Of course, this is just a correlation, but what we find is that this correlation is there controlling for a couple of things. And robotic replacement is not. Okay? And this pattern turns around when we look at future economic concern. Here we find that robotic replacement is associated with more future economic concerns, also when we control for a lot of different factors. So very quickly, because I mean you want coffee, so very quickly, what are the implications? So the implications are that basically we find that being replaced by modern technology has unique psychological consequences, and these should be taken into account by support programs when you deal with people who lost their jobs, right? These people are really, they understand that their skills are now less valuable in the labor market, and you should appropriately deal with that. Okay, but one point I want to talk a bit more is that an important question is, when is AI at the workplace not perceived as a threat and as de-skilling, but as an opportunity and as upskilling? So I mean, our study looks at the case when the whole job disappears, but the much more important case probably is the case when certain tasks will only disappear, and certain tasks will be automated, but the employee is still there. So, but how does the employee feel about that? I mean, do you feel that now, oh, cool, now some tasks are automated, it makes me more valuable, or do you think, oh, that's just the beginning? And under which conditions do you actually think that this is an upskilling thing? For example, would it matter if you give people choice which tasks are automated? I think this is a very important thing, because as also the other speakers already suggested, that technology is perceived as a kind of huge threat, even though this is sometimes clearly too much. So the question is, psychologically, how can we change that to not frame it as a threat, but also as an opportunity? And so basically, that's it. If you have any questions, feel free over coffee or to write me an email. Thank you.